I think it's another one if you look. I actually think the one in Maine is worse because he's just an outright pig. He's like a pig. I watched him a couple of times. He's like a pig. That's what he reminds me of. I come up with good names for people. I don't want to stick him with that one, although I think pigs would be very upset about it.
Yeah, that's the president of the United States attacking Graham Platner, call him a pig. The guy who was convicted by or recently found liable for sexual assault by a jury of his peers in New York City. The man who is on videotape saying that he would grab women by their genitals. The man who has proven himself to be one of the most awful human beings in America has the audacity to call Graham Platner a pig. And again, for me, Trump is a monster, but it's also the enablers, right? I'm more offended in a lot of ways by the lady in white there. Oh, Mr. President, you're so funny. And this took me back a while. And I want to take you back to a moment where I decided, for example, that I would spend the rest of my years of making sure that Donald Trump eventually pays for his crimes. And this is that moment. And you may have forgotten it because it was all the way back in July of 2015. And I think of it in this context, of Graham Platner and what he's gone through. And we're going to talk about that a lot in this show. But also, who is Donald Trump when he calls people pigs? Because for me, this is one of the most piggish goddamn things I've ever seen in my life.
He hit me. He's not a war hero.
War hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
Jules, agree with that?
He's a war hero because he was captured, okay? You could have, and I believe perhaps he's a war hero, but right now he said some very bad things about a lot of people.
I was talking about John McCain, but be careful what he said there. I like people who weren't captured. At the time, I was shocked. I thought, I was a veterans advocate at the time. I thought, oh, finally, thank God, this whole charade is over. Donald Trump is finished. I was a professional veterans advocate at a company whose job was to help corporations and nonprofits serve our veterans community. And I thought, thank God, this whole charade of what's become the Trump Republican Party, of Donald Trump, the party I already left at that point long ago, the party has become a monstrous, it smears everything I believe they stood for as a child, if you will, smears everything that we all thought they were. There's no way on God's green earth that my fellow veterans or the country is going to put up with a man saying that POWs are cowards, POWs are not heroes. Because in the military community, Gold Star families, the people who lost their lives, the service members who lost their lives, and their families called the Gold Star families, is the most revered group in our universe, followed by wounded warriors, those who have been injured, wear the Purple Heart, followed by POWs and MIAs. There's literally a flag on the White House of POW MIAs. And this monstrous, piggish fraud of a human being wanted to be the president of the United States, saying, I like people who weren't captured. But you remember what happened? Almost nothing. Almost nothing. The Republican Party, some of his opponents criticized him, and a number of people like members of Congress were, oh, this is terrible. Just like when the grab him by the genitals tape came out. But guess what? He's president today. And he has the audacity to call a veteran who's had a hard life a pig. And look, we can't forgive, we're not going to forgive certain things, obviously. Sexual assault, abuse, we will never stand for that. But let's talk about the larger picture here. Who's running for Congress this cycle? Who do we think are the right politicians? Because we're being told by a lot of people that certain people don't belong in politics. They don't have the perfect record. They don't have the perfect little petri dish grown life that has to be perfect in every way. They can't have any scars, or they can't have any mistakes. Certainly can't make mistakes in your past. We don't want that. And Graham Platner, by every measure, has made a lot of mistakes in his life. He had a hard life. He's a Marine Corps veteran. He saw real combat in Fallujah. He came home with debilitating PTSD by every measure, publicly known. He had a drinking problem. But that's not, you see, he's disqualified. He can't ever serve. I joke a lot in my other job that we should really stick to these petri dish grown candidates. Like we had this guy in Missouri named Josh Hawley. What a career that guy had. Lawyer, legal professor, scholar. How's that worked out for the country? Christian nationalist, anti-abortion extremist, manlyhood judger. So I want to have this conversation about that, not just Mr. Platner himself, but the larger picture of who qualifies to be a candidate these days. And as always, the perfect guest has fallen into my lap. Corbin Trent is a great voice for folks with the progressive side of things. I'm thrilled to have him. So let's start off there. Donald Trump calling anybody a pig. Let's have the conversation about piggishness. Let's have the conversation about who belongs in office today. And let's really talk about the real fight, the real pigs in our midst. Like today, we have the first trillionaire in history, Elon Musk, who, of course, is just clean as a whistle, has never made mistakes in his life. But we hold him up with emulation as we give him money. So let's have that conversation. I'm Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy with FP Wellman every week. Thanks to the Minus Money for being here live. Share with your friends right now. If you haven't shared this yet, what are you even doing here? My God, we're 5 minutes into this thing. Like, share, tell your friends about this show because we've got a lot to talk about. Let's get on with the show. Dude, man, I wonder. I got to look up how long we've had the show, how long the music's been playing. I love it still. We're off and running. I'm still Fred Wellman. I was 30 seconds ago. This is On Democracy right here at the Minus Touch Network every Friday night. And like I said at the beginning, it is an interesting time to be running. Okay, it's an interesting time for our country as the midterms approach. People are really getting energized right now, folks. I don't know if you saw. There's a story that came out yesterday. We have a record number of Democrats have voted in the primaries today. I don't think we're even halfway through the primaries yet. And a record number turnout, whereas like 33% of Republicans. It is an interesting time to be running for office for many people. And we got some incredible people running, people who aren't your typical candidates. So I was really excited to have the opportunity to talk to Corbin Trent, leader of A Fight Worth Having. Trent's a former director of comms for Representative AOC herself, co-founder of Justice Democrats, two-time presidential campaign staffer for Bernie Sanders. Trent, welcome to the show. Corbin, Mr. Trent.
Good to be here,
Mr. Trent.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, Mr. Trent. Yeah, that's
Mr.
my,
Trent,
that's my dad,
sir.
my granddad.
I say good day.
Yes, sir. How do you do, Mr. Wellman? How do you do?
How are you
It's
today,
pleasure to be
sir?
here.
Welcome to the show, man. Welcome from Tennessee. He's right in my neighborhood. What a thrill to have a fellow.
East Tennessee, Appalachian native, born and bred.
I would never get that from your voice.
I try to hide it. I disguise it like every other DC creature,
Yes, it had to be.
That was one of the weird things about DC. You meet all these Southerners, they'll be like, oh, I'm from that area too. And they sound like they're from, the Midwest. Nothing wrong with being from the Midwest, but it's bizarre.
This is actually my accent. It's funny. My thing is I talk really freaking fast. If you watch the show at all, I can't tell you how often I call up. You're like, that was a great conversation, Fred. What did you say? Because I didn't get anything. It's like, look, I hope
so people don't have to listen to you at 1.5 speed. It's just
no.
there.
We actually suggest that it's easier. Yeah, there was a point early when I would try to slow down, and I was like, you know what, it's not going to happen. So go to 0.5 to listen to me. But we're here. So I hope you saw the opening. You were here for the opening. I mean, my God, Donald Trump calling Graham Platner a pig. I mean, what do you even say to that?
I've been trying not to even get into the whataboutism as much with this as, it's hard not to, right? To be like, hey, voters, 70 some odd million voters, this guy was elected twice to the office. He was elected or nominated 3 times to be the nominee. And the lines that he's crossed, whether they're financial felonies, whether they're, accusations of sexual assault. And, I had to look up what the thing was called in New York, and it's called digital rape. And it's not as, bad. And it's worse than it sounds, right? It's not online. So the fact that these folks, like I go on Newsmax sometimes and they're like, so they're just indignant about this. Graham Platner was such a terrible boyfriend a few times and this and that and the other, or possibly even a really bad fiance, right? But the goal of these ideas, I would think, the goal of these investigations or, the New York Times spending months talking to dozens of women trying to find a couple that would say something bad, ostensibly is to give us a window into who they would be when they had power, what they would do with power, what they would be like with power, and then what that would mean for the people of Maine, what that would mean for the people of the United States. And I just find it sort of disgusting that we're looking at with such a microscope at this man's life to try to find that out when we've got people that are in power now that are actively supporting a genocidal regime, that are actively supporting, the Israelis right now have been using white phosphorus in Lebanon. That's documented. In the New York Times, that was documented. It wasn't questioned, and they said that it was somewhat harmful. That's what they said about white phosphorus, right? And so, but what we're doing in Iran, what we did in Iraq, hundreds of thousands of people
The
died,
boat
right?
strikes,
And people,
the shocking boat strikes, which we
I
do.
mean, the boat strikes that are going on. I mean,
Which
the
is
level
it's a
of
war. It's a
insanity.
war crime. It's a crime against humanity. It is. I mean, we now know that most of those people are probably actually being trafficked. Why would a drug smuggler do the moving himself if he can hold somebody hostage? I mean, we're probably murdering innocent people. Almost
Does
for sure.
Pablo, was he known to get on a lot of speedboats and run a
Right.
lot,
Right.
No. And then the hypocrisy of that, they're giving pardons to convicted drug dealers,
Yep.
from where, so it's like the idea that we can somehow use somebody's Tinder profile as a window into whether or not they're going to use power, when we can look at Susan Collins, look at it, look at the record, look at the damage, look at the death that these people have caused, and we don't need to wonder what they're going to do with power because we're seeing it. And I just find it, I guess, enraging is the word I would use, right? Enraging that this is how we've decided to conduct our politics. And it's mostly the Democrats that get held to this standard, whether it's Al Franken or whomever else, it's the Democratic candidates that get held to the standard, and especially if they're going to go in there as rabble rousers,
There you go.
And
your career's been rabble rousers. I mean, you were with Bernie, you were with AOC. I mean, so you've always seen sort of this side of the politics. You've never been one of the traditional Democrats. Yeah, I'm sure you're not getting the calls from our friends, the DCCC and others. Your whole career has been on that side of this. I mean, I think at this point you're probably not shocked, are you?
I'm not, and that's sort of like the first time I ever got involved in a presidential campaign or, anything at all was Barack Obama's first, when he was running in the primary. And what drew me in was this idea of change, this idea, like it seemed when he was running for president, that he understood that we need structural transformational change, that things weren't functioning well, that people were losing the ability to afford the quality of life, that there was a problem with our justice system, but I was, ultimately disappointed in that, and I just quit paying as much attention because they, famously put in a bunch of the, Citibank approved chiefs of staff and cabinet members and Rahm Emanuel and all this. But so then the next time I got inspired enough was Bernie, and I think that the same, like you said, I'm from East Tennessee here, and it's a very Republican area.
Yeah.
And these people were very much hopeful that Donald Trump would go in and tear the system down and rebuild something better for them. That's what inspired them. They weren't like drawn to him because he was a piece of crap or because he was a monster. It was in spite of that. It was because they thought that would be a useful, way of approaching things. But what they agreed with him with is that America was a asshole country, right? That we were becoming a third world country. That was a lot of the things that he said,
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, the Democratic Party, like Gavin Newsom, he thinks that it's about, snappy, gruff tweets. It's not. It's about a recognition that this system is broken. And they don't seem to recognize that. They don't want to confront that reality.
Mhm.
And I find that remarkable, and I find it enraging. And when somebody like Graham Platner does say that, he says things like, we should look at impeaching some of our Supreme Court justices that have, violated ethics laws, that have obviously done things that are antithetical to the Constitution, like maybe saying that the president's above the law.
Yep.
Like, that's so obviously non-constitutional. Like, I'm not a constitutional scholar,
No.
but I know that the president's not above the law.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Kind of the basis of this whole goddamn thing. And it is shocking to me when people push back about just common sense things like that. Like the amount of just the grift, the graft, the bribery for Clarence Thomas and I mean, they're rubbing it in our faces, right? And it's frustrating as hell to see people in Washington, as you say, well, my dear colleague, it's like, no, there's no more dear colleague shit. That ship sailed a long time ago. We're not doing this. Yeah, the norms, the obsession with norms and traditions. I mean, it is like I used to say in interviews all the time, Northern traditions went out the window when that fat ass came down the escalator, right? He showed us that he doesn't care about Northern traditions. What he cares about is what he can get away with. You know, and I had a company and I've run PACs. You get it. I've run campaigns and I used to tell my lawyers, you know, give me a bright, clear line of what's legal and then move me 10 degrees from that before I get to it. Right. Trump's approach to lawyers is, what can I get away with? How many degrees can I cross the line of legality before I actually get held accountable? And I don't think our systems and the people in place right now, and power, a lot of them, are ever still not prepared for that. After 10 years of Donald Trump, they're still dumbfounded by the fact that he doesn't give a shit about their Northern traditions. I mean, it shocks you, doesn't it?
I mean, yeah, I do find it shocking. Still find it shocking, right? Is that this system actually isn't built to hold people with power accountable. There was sort of like an honor system, you know, and that's been a remarkable thing to see. And it's the appetite for conflict that I think doesn't exist. The appetite for there are actually mechanisms by which you could do this. There's a special prosecutor unit for war crimes. There are ways to investigate. We could have been investigating Donald Trump for war crimes during the Biden years, but we decided not to, partially because we were participating in them during the Biden years, right? So, and I think that's where you get into this sort of like, it's like a mutually assured destruction, right? Like if you start going after people for insider trading, I mean, there's a lot of Democrats that are going to be vulnerable if you start doing that. If you start going after people for war crimes, there's some Democrats and Republicans, so each side is assured not to use the, break in case of emergency glass, because the emergency runs through both parties. The emergency runs through DC, so you start putting people in jail for violating the law in DC, and you're going to need buses,
And that's it. I mean, we like to use those laws too. Something I talk about a lot is the National Emergencies Act, right? That Trump uses it as a get out of jail for everything card. But then again, you've also seen presidents on our side of the ticket also use the National Emergency Act as a way of, Joe Biden tried to use it for student loans. So there's not an appetite to change something. But the problem is the short-sightedness that goes into not recognizing how it can be used against us. The Hatch Act is a complete effing joke now. I mean, as we sit here, there's a UFC dome built on the goddamn South Lawn of the White House that is privately, they literally handed over security and management to UFC, a private company. There's a Bud Light advertisements on the South Lawn of the United States White House. And not a damn thing's being done about it. A private corporation. I mean, could you imagine any of us having done that? I remember going to the White House for invited events. You can't, nobody cares. And no one on your side of the aisle looks like has any appetite to say, this is wrong. Even I'm stunned. And I've been in politics for a minute too, and I'm stunned by it all at times. It just makes no sense.
Don't you think, though, it's the level of work that it would take to repair the system that sort of pushes people out of it? Out of trying to change it, like that's the thing that I find kind of inspirational about Platner, is that he's going through all this, right? Well, not well, whatever, however you want to look at it. He's going through all this. He's willing to go through what is obviously unpleasant, right? Because he believes in a thing and he's willing to try this and he's willing to push to get it done. I would say the same thing, when I was working with Alexandria on the Hill. Death threats were like continuous, right? Like we would decide whether or not to do a magazine cover. Part of the conversation would be, it's going to increase the number of death threats if I do that, but is it going to be good for getting this message out or whatever, right? So, when you see like Abdullah Saeed, or you see Devin McKinney that's running in Michigan 13, you see all these people that are out there and willing to take on the attacks, willing to take on the threats, willing to take on the immovable seeming government, right? To try to make it better for people. And it's hard not to look at that and be impressed, and I think that's one of the things that makes, whether it's veterans or what, these people that are fighters that have something to fight for, just having a fighter is better than a non-fighter, but it's better when your fighter has a mission, and we're getting more with missions.
I get that in my other job. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. And I think that's the thing. I'm so glad to see so many young people, or not young, that's wrong. New people is the way I want to say it, who are running because they're on a mission. They get it. They believe we're in trouble. And that it's a great place to transition to talk about your organization's mission. You know, affordability, accountability, democracy drives you. I was very impressed, but as we were researching the show and getting to know your organization, especially, you guys are very focused on the idea that and is that what drives you? It sounds like a mission organization you're running right now.
Yeah, I mean, so A Fight Worth Having came out of frustration with seeing Donald Trump talk about a lot of things that I thought were important to talk about, but then not providing solutions, whether it was inflation or housing or bringing manufacturing back onshore, all these things he talked about. And then I would have to listen to the Democratic Party largely say, oh, that's crazy. We're never bringing manufacturing back. Oh, affordability is not really that big of a deal. Or, whatever it was that they would say, it was like leaving all this on the table, And so I got extremely frustrated about watching that and then seeing sort of the brain trust say, well, actually, purchasing power has gone up. Real wages have risen since 1950, and it's amazing. We're doing better than we ever have, And so then I started trying to okay, this is not true, right? Why is it that Democrats think that this is the best economy ever? Why is it they think that this system is so functional? Why is it they think the solution to healthcare is pumping more money into this system instead of restructuring the system? Because, that's one of the things that sort of drives me nuts about this idea of wealth taxes, right? I definitely think we need to go after the power that, a newly minted trillionaire has. I think we need to go after the power that centy billionaires have. But I don't think if you just take their wealth and their money and then put it back into a system that takes it from the oligarchs and then gives it to baby oligarchs, like in the medical profession or here or there, everywhere, it doesn't really do much for the power of the rest of the population, right? Economic or otherwise. So I find that when you look at affordability as a real problem, it's a problem that goes beyond people's ability to live a good life. It runs against their trust in their government. It runs against their trust in their economy. It just is a demoralizing and corrosive thing to never get ahead. And then to be told that you're better off than anybody that came before you.
Right.
That's insane.
And now we've got whole generations, Gen Z, millennials. I have kids that age and they're burned out. I mean, one of the most heartbreaking stories I tell is as I was talking to one of my oldest son, who said, when I was talking about a job I decided to go for, he said, I gotta be honest with you, Dad. And he's an army veteran like me. He said, I gotta be honest with you. He goes, me and my wife, we feel like our purpose in life is increasing shareholder value. And I'm the son of a World War II vet, grandson of a World War I vet, immigrants, grandson of immigrants. And it was one of those heartbreaking things I've heard from one of my kids that they're at a point now in their 30s where they've just kind of accept the fact that their purpose is to be a cog in the wheel of shareholder increasing 10% of our population's wealth. And as I spoke to people across this region about that, I hear it every day. I hear it over and over that young people today, and I'm not talking just kids. We've somehow forgot that millennials are in almost their 40s now. They're all burned out. They know that the system is rigged against them, and it's coming true now. And the dreams of our fathers, which is a common term you hear a lot. I'm the son of a World War II veteran. It's like the greatest generation. We talk about it all the time. Books have been written, and we're not giving our generations that same head. And you're right, to see the people who look, say, like Chuck Schumer or others, perhaps they have gray hair, to say, oh, everything is great. Everything's, look at the numbers, look at the CPI. The CPI is great, you guys. I mean, look at real wages, not your wages.
GDP.
Real. Yeah. How can you not look at the GDP? Because it's a percentage. It's like, the fuck are you talking about? Okay. People can't buy fucking houses. The average age of a first-time homebuyer in America is 40.
Right.
40. And if you can't look at that number alone and say, what the fuck have we done? I start dropping F-bombs in the show, which I'm not supposed to do anymore.
Well,
It's like, how do you not see it? Right? It's like, it's right there.
And that's the thing, and then you'll hear things, well, it's because they're buying avocado toast or latte, or they should have the other, right?
That one.
But what's funny is, if you look at where people are spending their money, like there's this thing. So I spent like months just like in numbers, right? And there's this thing called the Consumer Unit Expenditure Survey that we do. And you start looking at food, eating out, eating in. And it's like 4%, 5% of income.
Yeah.
That's not where the money's going. It's not the frickin' avocado toast, man. It's not the lattes, right?
No.
Where their money going is healthcare. Where their money's going is housing. Where the money going is transportation. Like, there's this sort of like foundational
Energy.
things that you need in life. And after you pay those, your rent, your food, your da-da-da-da, there's nothing left. You've done. So you don't get the chance to go forward. And so one of the things I love, and we're starting to see more of this, is when you compare median income to median costs of things. And
Yeah.
like, so in 1960, it took an average worker 3.7 years of work to outright buy a median house. Like they could have earned enough money in 3.7 years of work at median income to outright pay off a house. Now, of course, people didn't do that. They went on vacations and ate whatever the equivalent of avocado toast was and drank whatever the equivalent of lattes were and, bought cars and, boats and lived the middle-class lifestyle, right? But now it's over 10 years of income it takes to buy the median home, right? So you've had this massive rise and it's not just housing. It's how much we spend on healthcare. Now, a lot of that is hidden because we got government debt paying for it. A lot of that is hidden because of subsidies, but it's still increasing astronomically out of the affordability range. And the problem is that nobody in our government, nobody in the leadership is really willing to do the work to change that. I keep hearing about all these hospitals that are going to close. There's hospitals all across this country that are in danger of closing, right? Is there tons where you're at? There's hundreds and hundreds across this country.
Missouri's getting gutted. We have healthcare deserts in my state.
Yeah. 80% of counties in this country are in a healthcare desert of some sort, whether it's, hospitals, trauma, or mental health care. 80%.
Yeah, birth. I have a friend who's running for Congress in Idaho. Her staffer had to drive 3.5 hours for a OB appointment for a baby. 3.5 hours.
Say that again. How long?
3.5 hours to get
3.5
to
hours.
see a doctor for her baby. The nearest
And this
birthing
is
center,
happening
3.5
all
hours.
across this country.
Yep.
You're seeing places close. You're seeing rural clinics close. You're seeing birthing centers close. You're seeing dialysis centers close.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the only answer that Democrats have, the big answer, right? Their biggest proposal is Medicare for all. Pump more money into the system, right?
Yeah.
Now, the problem with that is the more money you give these people, the more consolidation you're going to see because the more power you're going to give them. If you try to save a rural healthcare clinic by just giving them more and more cash, all you're doing is extending the life of a dying thing. What I find to be crazy, I was born in a place called Morristown Hamlin Hospital. Now, that's the name of the city I was born and the name of the county I was born. And it's not just a clever name. It was actually owned by a joint venture between the city and the county. And when I looked at this, I saw in 1982, the 2 years after I was born, 40% of American hospital beds were owned by either the federal government, state governments, county governments, or city governments. We owned 40% of our actual healthcare infrastructure, not the insurance, right? The infrastructure. And what's the benefit of that? Well, it allows you to compete. You know what a coronary bypass costs because you do them. You know what insulin costs because you're buying it, And so we've become as a country and as a government and as a state government, city government, so disconnected from the actual things that we're trying to deliver. We got no idea what their value is. And somebody tells us, well, that toilet seat costs $1,000. And we're like, well, okay, that's crazy, but I guess so. Must be hard to make.
Exactly.
Oh, man,
Yeah, no, and it's all buried and hidden. Well, and it does go back to this idea that we've privatized so much. I mean, and actually, that's a great way to segue into the piece your team wrote about our new trillionaire today. Elon Musk. I mean, when you dig into Elon Musk's wealth, loan from the government for Tesla, loan from the government for SpaceX, and now he's a trillionaire. And the United States government invested in that to make it happen. It is a weird day where we're eulogizing, celebrating a trillionaire who only got there through essentially being a welfare queen in a lot of ways, isn't it?
I mean, there's no question. I mean, so much. I mean, Tesla wouldn't exist. SpaceX wouldn't exist. Both of them would have gone out of business in, this free market capitalism that we're always hearing about because they were both on the verge of bankruptcy.
I'm a capitalist. Are you?
Yeah. When they were bailed out, so $500 million loan from the government that would have, with a promise of 3 million shares in Tesla, right? And it's not just the fact that SpaceX got lots of funding to start this up. They also got preferential treatment. They got around $40 billion in contracts so far, plus the promise of more. And then you look at Starlink. We had an auction for because we own the airwaves, it turns out.
Right.
They're ours, just like the waterways, just like the roadways. These are our airwaves. And we had, and we sold it to him for pennies on the dollar, and we demand nothing for it. And now he's doing this big IPO for a company that's never made a profit.
Ever.
Never made a profit. And it's going to be a multi-trillion-dollar operation, never made a damn profit, right? And whose money's going to go in there to keep that stock price up, do you reckon? It's going to be our money through our 401ks that get automatically deducted, and we don't see it because he got put in to the NASDAQ index ahead of schedule, right? A non-profitable company that doesn't have a real clear pathway to becoming profitable, that's supported by government finance, essentially it's just a welfare state company. And we're supposed to be grateful because is he, a job creator?
Yeah. Yeah, that's my favorite one. Yeah, don't chase all the billionaires. Peter Thiel's in Argentina. It has become such a weird. I have a hard time. I struggle daily to put this in context of who we think are great and who isn't. And how we've lost our way as a nation with this stupid belief that we might be one of those billionaires someday. The number of people in my orbit who support the billionaires and the millionaires, like, oh, you don't understand. That no, I do understand. They haven't done shit for us. They're gonna lay you off in a heartbeat. And the same thing goes to the AI growth. Like literally, what did the Washington Post show that we're looking at 330,000 jobs disappearing by 2030. And they're almost overwhelmingly POC and women for majority jobs. And they're telling us to our face they're going to do it. They literally are proudly talking about doing it. And we've got other folks go, oh, well, we got to keep up the Chinese, Fred. Like, yeah, we definitely got to, it's like, what, to put moms and grandmas out of work? That's how we keep it the Chinese. Like, and then when they are unemployed, they're going to look at the government and say, well, you guys fucked up. How can you even do training programs? It is just, right? It's like somehow going to still be our fault. It boggles my mind how often I call it the trust me bro system, right? No, it's gonna be great. Trust me, bro. No, it's not. I don't trust you, bro. I don't trust you.
And how many times have we heard that before? This trust me, bro.
Right. For years.
Yeah. You go back to Clinton and NAFTA, you go back to this and that, so I was in manufacturing before I got into all this. I ran my granddad's plywood company, and then I had a metalworking shop that made automated drilling machines.
Yeah.
And it got to the point really where I was just going to be a warehouse. I was going to import stuff from Brazil or China, and then I was going to sell it to customers, and that was it. And then all the furniture industry in, say, High Point, North Carolina, and on down the line towards us started dying off. These things that had been running entire towns died off, right? Just like the steel mills, just like the Rust Belt, all of this stuff went away. And what's ironic to me is that we went through the sort of like McCarthyism, fear of the communists, right? Because the communists wanted to take over our means of production. The communists wanted the people to own the means of production, and we had to fight it tooth and nail at the risk of nuclear war. But then, through neoliberalism, we decided, actually, it's not that important. Let's give it to China. The means of production was so important that we had to possibly risk nuclear war and destroying the planet Earth for it. But actually, it's not so important that we can't give it away to the Chinese. And
because profits. Yeah. I mean, it's super, margins, it's cheaper. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's such a great, it's the perfect encapsulation of where we are today. And you're right. We have both had a hand in this. And you said something is that the idea of affordability, it's the topic du jour, because it's all I hear. Look, everybody I talk to, affordability is this issue. It's not even, I remember somebody arguing that's a big word that nobody wants. No, they understand it now. But I say all the time, isn't the price of eggs, folks? It's not even the price of gas today. It's the price. And you touched on it earlier in the conversation. Like, no, everything's more expensive. Life is more expensive. And people can't even go on vacation anymore. The American dream, that's what was such a crock of shit about that idiot road trip across America. I'm sorry, brother. The average American can't afford a vacation right now. They can't. And that quality of life is so bad that they can't afford it. Best they can do is Netflix. Somewhere along the line, the middle class became barely making it. It's just all blended now, isn't it?
It's just shrinking and shrinking. And I think basically you've got the top 20% is living more or less the American dream-ish. A lot of, even some of those folks, though, are still doing it on credit or this or that or the other.
Yeah.
But there doesn't seem to be a recognition of how far from affordable we are. That's the problem. Like Hakeem Jeffries is out there this week talking about affordability is going to be the name of the game, and they're going to talk about subsidizing this or subsidizing that. Like, you hear housing ideas. And I just was doing some stuff in San Francisco in a race there. And the big ideas there are we'll subsidize housing prices. But they're not talking about bringing down prices,
Right.
and bringing up wages. And they're terrified of it. They're terrified of things coming down because they think of that as deflationary and, we got to keep growing and growing and growing. But if you keep growing beyond what people are capable of dealing with, then what happens? And I think eventually what you find is they keep electing people like Donald Trump and eventually somebody gets really good at destroying things. I think we've gotten kind of lucky with Donald Trump's ineptitude. And we've gotten kind of lucky with his lack of focus on anything other than enriching himself. Like he doesn't really care about taking over the country. He doesn't, he that's not like his whole idea. He would prefer to have not that much electoral competition. If he could pass the SAVE Act, great. Let's redistrict. But he's not really going to go full on. I want to rule everything because one thing I think he's fundamentally lazy and it's too much work.
And he's bored. He's bored.
And he gets.
I mean, he said it like the Iran war. He's bored. He's
I'm
the
done.
president's boring now. It's like, oh, this isn't actually that much fun. He's got the money. The goal is to get rich. He only respects money. We know that.
Exactly.
And which is also why he's handing the government actually over to Stephen Miller and Russell Vought and all the lunatics and nut job. Pete Hegseth creating his own. Pete Hegseth isn't doing Trump's agenda. He's doing Pete Hegseth's white Christian nationalist agenda. So we've got these little fiefdoms across the government. But Donald Trump isn't actually in charge of any of that. They feed him he wants his ballroom, he wants his fucking gold crap all over his office, right? That's it, isn't it?
But you mentioned Josh Hawley. There's people out there that do have ideas, that do think that they should run everything, that do things that, you know what I mean? Like there are people out there with different ideas and different visions. Stephen Miller, for example, if he had the power Trump has, it would be a very disastrous scenario, right? And I don't know that those people aren't out there. And unless the Democratic Party can see the pain that Americans are in, the economic struggles, the lack of accountability that exists in this nation, and do something about it at the scale it deserves, then we're going to continue back in this cycle, I think. Because I think we've been sort of in this cycle of giving up on our democracy and our elections since Reagan. I think that basically Reagan was a Hail Mary towards change this thing, right? Do something better with America. We're not happy with the way things are going. And basically nothing ever came. They tried it again with Clinton. They tried it, blah, 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 blah. We've kept trying different things. And people have gotten increasingly frustrated. And that's where you get born, say, you're Bernie Sanders, or that's where you get born, say, you're Donald Trump's. And those are people that have articulated Americans' desire for change and the depth and the scale of that change. And then also their willingness to accept insanity. Like Donald Trump was genuinely overtly evil.
Still is. Yeah, and it shows it even more so every day as his filters get lowered. Last thing I want to, and it wasn't on our agenda to talk about, but all I can think about as you were talking there at the end there is Mamdani. That Mamdani, the rise of Mamdani, where he shows you could be competent and you could do big things as an executive with executive power. How do you think that shakes things up? It feels like that's scaring a lot of powers to be because he's showing that actually, if you actually do the things you said you're going to do, and then take bold moves to do them, it's possible, isn't it? It's the realm of possible as much as anything else, isn't it?
I think it's super exciting. And I think the other thing that's super exciting about Mamdani now is that he's starting to flex some of his political muscles. And I think that's huge, right? When you start, like at first, I was worried that he was going to get in there and just kind of like try to focus on just being a good mayor and not on being a movement leader, a political leader, and a political influencer there and building political power. But he's doing both. He's walking and chewing gum, and that's wonderful and exciting. So the limits to what a mayor can do exist, right? You can't rent money, you can't do this, you can't,
Congressman.
But if you get like a FDR style Democrat, right, one that's ready to take this same type of challenge and go that distance that Mamdani is, and you pair them with people like Zoran Mamdani at the city levels or at the state levels, we could be the country we've dreamt of being. We could see the growth in the design come into shape. But, and I think that we're starting to toy with it around the edges. There are people that are running outside of the norm. So many people that's happening this cycle. And I think that 2028, what you're going to see is some folks that none of it, like if I said to you, who do you like in 28? My guess is that whoever we nominate, neither one of us would say that person.
Yep.
Because it'll be somebody that, it'll be a new person, a new idea, new excitement, and it'll mesh with people that are running for House, that are running for Senate, that are running for mayoral races around the country. And that's what I'm at least hopeful for.
I love it. What a great place to wind up that conversation. So most important question I ask every guest like you, where can they find you? Where can they help? Where can they kick in? You're endorsing candidates. Tell us about where we can help you.
afightworthhaving.com is the easiest way to do it. So you can see, all my social media there. Social media feeds are there. My Substack is there. Some of the ads that we've been doing, polling that we've been doing, it's all there. And we're a super PAC. And I mean that we're super. And we're a PAC, but we're both. So, you can go on there and support what we're doing, see the candidates that we like, and hopefully sign up. And I email 3 times a week my opinions.
All right.
Analysis.
Sign up, folks. Definitely worth it. Corbin, I can't thank you enough for jumping on here. I appreciate you doing this. This is a great conversation. Timing was impeccable, and I appreciate that so much. So, look, I look forward to talking to you again, my friend. Good luck out there. Keep up the fight.
Can't wait. Thank you so much, Fred.
Woo, what a great conversation. I probably could have talked to Corbin for another hour. The world's changed, folks. It's not avocado toast. It's not the lattes. I had someone say something along those lines to me in an event I was at recently, and he was like, these kids, blah, 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 blah. I said, listen to me. I remember when I was a young parent, and I remember people saying to me that they called the millennials the trophy generation. And I say a simple thing when I hear that. Who bought the trophies? Who bought the trophies? It sure as hell wasn't my 7-year-old. It was us. It was people that look like me. Probably look like you if you're watching this show, because y'all tend to look like me. And I got to tell you, we did this. It's hard to fucking swallow, I know. We did this. And since we did this, we owe it to this generation and the next and the next and the future of this country and world to fix it fast. Because we're not getting any younger, folks. Those young men and women who are trying to make ends meet, trying to fucking survive, just trying to make every day work for them and their young families. As people that look like me beat them up for not having enough kids, as people like me beat them up for what the money choices they made, they don't have the assets and values that we did. Period. And as soon as we wake up to that and start acting like we're on a clock, that we haven't got generations left to fix this, we're going to win. I mentioned during the show, in 4 years, it's expected we'll lose over 330,000 jobs to AI. And I haven't seen a single policy or plan or approach to saying what we're going to do with that hundreds of thousands of people put out of work. Nothing except trust me. Don't worry. AI is going to create all kinds of new jobs. Really, what jobs? Don't worry about it, Fred. Trust me. I don't trust you. Sorry. I don't trust your money. I don't trust organizations that put government officials on NDAs. So no, trust me, bro, doesn't work for me. I want contracts. I want plans. I want laws. I want regulations. I want guardrails, because we're being raped right now financially by people who are getting richer by the day. This is on the same day the first trillionaire was created. A trillionaire who thinks that he should repopulate the earth with multiple women, and shit talks on Twitter all day. No, I don't trust any of you until it's in writing. Because, folks, let me be very blunt. I'm from Missouri, the show me state. And that actually comes from a gentleman who spoke in the 1800s during a speech. And he said, essentially, I don't trust your flowery words and eloquence. I'm from Missouri. You have to show me. And I am standing by that today. Your flowery words and your trust me, bro shit doesn't work on me. I'm from Missouri. You need to show me the plan, show me the laws, and show me the money, where it's going and to whom. Because words and NDAs don't work for me. shouldn't work for you either. So demand better. Folks, it's the middle of primary season. If you have the opportunity to vote, if you have the opportunity to help a candidate, do it right now. Hang up, turn off the YouTube when this is over and tell your friends about the show first, and then go help a candidate run in your local area. Because folks, this is our chance. Send people to Washington who actually want to shake up the system. So with that, thanks for joining me. Always a pleasure every Friday night here on the Midas Touch Network, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific. We're so thrilled to hear again. Follow our Substack, fpwellman.substack.com. It's so easy to find. You can scan that QR code right up in the corner of the screen, blow it up real big, use your phone. Join us for free. Find out all the work we're doing. There's a lot of stuff coming I'm very proud of. I'd love to tell you more about it. But again, that's the place to find it. I'm Fred Wellman. We'll see you again next week. Keep it the fight, folks, because we're not done yet.